Welcome to Astrology Chunks. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and talked about topics in astrology, synastry. If you're just starting a new relationship and wondering, is this the real deal or am I heading straight for heartbreak? Then synastry is your quick guide to peek into the future. Synastry is the comparison of two birth charts to determine relationship compatibility. It helps you understand how your planets interact with your partners, and whether the connection is smooth, intense, or potentially toxic. Now, this can be done manually if you're familiar with astrology. But for most people, it's easier to use one of the many free, well-reputed astrology websites that offer synastry charts. Just make sure you know the date, place, and time of birth, both yours and your partner's. Even if the birth time is unknown, you can still work with the chart, but keep in mind, some crucial factors like the moon sign, ascendant/descendant, midheaven/IC, and house placements will not be accurate. So, do not take these placements into account if you don't know the exact birth time, either yours or your partner's. Though synastry is a concept rooted in Western astrology, you can also explore it using sidereal astrology. The planetary aspects stay the same, only the zodiac sign placements differ, but this does not affect the aspects themselves. However, both your chart and your partner's chart must be based on the same astrology system, either Western or sidereal. Today, our focus is on the red flag synastry aspects you should never ignore, because they often lead to painful relationship issues down the road. You know those classic toxic dynamics? Can't move on? Keep going back to the same person again and again? Addicted to someone? Obsession? Stalking, manipulation, abuse, physical or mental? Ghosting, abandonment, cheating? Constant communication issues or suddenly fading interest? These problems don't just develop over time, they're usually written in the stars from day one. You just don't notice it at the start. That's why it's so important to check the synastry before emotionally investing too deeply. So stay tuned, we're about to explore the major synastry warning signs that could save you from future heartbreak. In synastry, soft aspects are considered highly favorable and tend to support a smooth and healthy connection in relationships. In astrology, soft aspects, like the trine and sextile, represent harmony, flow, and natural understanding between two people. These alignments make it easier for a relationship to grow without too much friction. On the flip side, we have the hard aspects, which are usually more challenging. These include the square and opposition. They create tension and are often seen as hurdles to peace and balance in a relationship. Now, there's also the conjunction. This happens when two planets from different charts are very close together in the same sign and degree range. In synastry, this means the energies of those planets strongly combine, often creating an intense and noticeable connection between two people. Technically, it's a hard aspect, especially when it involves intense or malefic planets like Saturn, Mars, Sun, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. But conjunctions can also bring a unique synergy, where two energies merge and produce something greater than they could on their own. For example, if person A's Saturn is conjunct person B's Venus in synastry, person B may initially feel restricted or emotionally burdened. However, over time, this influence can help person B develop a more mature and stable approach to love. The Saturn person often teaches the Venus person how to commit and take relationships seriously. That said, hard aspects in synastry aren't always bad. They can push you out of your comfort zone and spark personal growth. However, when these hard aspects involve one partner's malefic planets, like Saturn, Mars, or Pluto, forming harsh connections to the other person's personal planets, like Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or Ascendant, then the relationship can get really tough. These connections should be taken seriously. The situation becomes even more difficult when there are no soft aspects balancing the hard ones. For example, if someone's Pluto is squaring your moon with a tight orb, within 5 degrees, you'll feel it deeply. Imagine your moon is at 8 degrees Leo and their Pluto is at 7 degrees Scorpio, that's an orb of just 1 degree. That's intense. Now imagine that same Pluto is squaring multiple of your personal planets, all at close orbs. This isn't just tension, it's emotional chaos. If you move forward in a relationship with someone whose Pluto hits multiple planets in your chart with hard aspects, you're entering a relationship that can feel dark, obsessive, and taboo. What's even more complicated? When these hard aspects mirror, for instance, their Pluto squares your Venus, and your Pluto squares their Venus too. This forms a pattern of mutual emotional entanglement that is magnetic yet destructive. These bonds feel irresistible, but they come with serious consequences. And it's not just romantic partners. Synastry affects all relationships, friends, family, coworkers. Ever wonder why someone gives you a powerful energy boost, while another just drains you? That's synastry at work. While Pluto tends to create the most extreme effects, it's not the only planet to watch. Hard aspects from Saturn, Mars, Uranus, or Neptune to your personal planets, especially if multiple personal planets are involved, can also cause long-term damage to emotional health, stability, and trust in relationships. So in today's video, we're going to break down these hard synastry aspects, from the most dangerous to the relatively manageable. But in my book, they're all red flags worth paying attention to. If you see these patterns in your chart with someone else, stay alert and protect your emotional energy. Let's go over them, one by one. Pluto square or opposition in synastry. Pluto square or opposition to the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or ascendant in synastry always brings out the dark side of a relationship. When Pluto forms a square or opposition to someone's personal planets or ascendant in synastry, the connection can quickly become toxic, consuming, and emotionally dangerous. These aspects create power struggles, manipulation, and obsessive dynamics that are hard to escape. When Pluto squares or opposes the Sun, it can lead to control over the ego and identity. The Sun person may feel constantly belittled or suppressed, losing their confidence and vitality. In the case of Moon, Pluto penetrates the emotional core, triggering deep fears and emotional dependence. The Moon person often feels psychologically manipulated or emotionally blackmailed. With Mercury, Pluto uses words as weapons. Communication becomes a battleground filled with mind games, gaslighting, or obsessive thinking. When Pluto hard aspects Venus, love turns into control, possessiveness, and emotional bondage. The Venus person might feel desired, but in a way that feels suffocating, degrading, or fear-based. With Mars, the tension is explosive. Pluto may try to dominate the Mars person's will, actions, or sexuality, often leading to aggression, resentment, and in extreme cases, abuse. When Pluto squares or opposes the ascendant, it affects the very way someone presents themselves to the world. The Pluto person may try to mold, suppress, or control the ascendant person's outward identity, creating a deep sense of vulnerability, insecurity, or confusion about who they are. Overall, Pluto's hard aspects in synastry can bring intense attraction, but the dark side includes emotional domination, psychological warfare, fear-driven attachment, and a deeply toxic pattern of control and submission. Without maturity and conscious effort, these connections often become emotionally or psychologically damaging. Saturn square or opposition in synastry. Saturn square or opposition to the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or ascendant in synastry always brings out the cold wall in relationships. When Saturn forms square or opposition aspects in synastry, the relationship often feels like a cold, heavy burden weighed down by criticism, restriction, and emotional distance. These aspects can create harsh power imbalances, where one person, typically the Saturn individual, plays the role of the authority figure, judge, or emotional blocker. When Saturn squares or opposes the Sun, it can crush the Sun person's self-expression and vitality. The Sun may feel constantly judged or not good enough, as if they're always being told to be more responsible or do better, leading to low self-esteem and a sense of failure in the relationship. When it hits the Moon, the Saturn person can feel cold or emotionally unavailable, making the Moon person feel neglected, unloved, or emotionally unsafe. There's a deep emotional wall, and the Moon person may constantly feel like they're walking on eggshells. With Mercury, Saturn can silence communication. The Saturn person may criticize the way the Mercury person thinks or speaks, causing intellectual insecurity and fear of expressing one's true thoughts. In the case of Venus, love turns into obligation. The Venus person may feel emotionally starved, while the Saturn person comes off as cold, dismissive, or even transactional. Affection is withheld, and love begins to feel like a chore. With Mars, Saturn restricts energy, action, and passion. The Mars person may feel blocked, emasculated, or constantly held back, leading to sexual frustration or deep resentment. Lastly, when Saturn hard aspects the ascendant, it feels like a judgment of one's very identity. The ascendant person may feel unattractive, inadequate, or that their personality is not acceptable. Over time, this creates a sense of inferiority and self-doubt. While Saturn can bring stability when well placed, its hard aspects in synastry often build invisible walls, where love, expression, and emotional safety are slowly worn down by criticism, guilt, fear, and emotional detachment. These connections can become painfully rigid, emotionally suffocating, and hard to leave due to a false sense of duty or karmic guilt. Neptune square or opposition in synastry. Neptune square or opposition to the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or ascendant in synastry always brings the illusion trap in relationships. When Neptune forms hard aspects like the square or opposition in synastry, the relationship can feel like a beautiful dream at first, until it unravels into confusion, lies, and disillusionment. Neptune distorts reality, and in these challenging aspects, it becomes the planet of deception, escapism, and emotional fog. When Neptune squares or opposes the Sun person may feel unseen or misunderstood, as if their identity is being twisted or projected onto. The Neptune person may idealize or romanticize the Sun, only to later withdraw or reject them when the fantasy fades. This often leaves the Sun person confused, betrayed, and doubting their worth. When the aspect touches the Moon, emotional confusion and subtle emotional manipulation are common. The Moon person may feel emotionally abandoned, gaslight, or guilty for no clear reason, as Neptune's energy dissolves emotional boundaries and creates instability. With Mercury, communication is clouded. Misunderstandings, half-truths, and misinterpretations run rampant. The Neptune person might lie or withhold information, while the Mercury person feels like they're trying to grasp smoke, unsure of what's real or imagined. When Neptune hard aspects Venus, love is dangerously romanticized. The Venus person may fall hard for a fantasy, only to realize they were chasing an illusion. This often leads to betrayal, secret affairs, unrequited love, or painful emotional abandonment. In the case of Mars, Neptune's confusing energy diffuses drive and desire. The Mars person may feel drained, unmotivated, or sexually confused. This can also result in manipulation through guilt or passive-aggressive behavior. Lastly, when Neptune squares or opposes the ascendant, the Neptune person may misread or project fantasies onto the ascendant individual, expecting them to play a role that isn't real. Over time, the ascendant person may feel like they're losing their sense of identity, or worse, being deceived by someone who never truly saw them in the first place. These Neptune aspects are emotionally and spiritually slippery. They promise magic but deliver confusion, heartbreak, and betrayal when boundaries are weak and illusions are mistaken for love. Mars square or opposition in synastry. Mars square or opposition to the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or ascendant in synastry always brings the volatile clash in relationships. When Mars forms hard aspects like the square or opposition in synastry, the relationship becomes charged with conflict, anger, and raw ego battles. Mars brings heat, but in difficult contacts, that heat becomes destructive, turning attraction into competition, chemistry into aggression, and love into a battlefield. When Mars squares or opposes the Sun person may feel constantly challenged, provoked, or even attacked by Mars. This dynamic can lead to ego clashes, where both struggle for dominance, and the Mars person may come off as rude, pushy, or aggressive. When this harsh energy hits the Moon, emotional safety is shattered. Mars can wound the Moon person deeply through emotional outbursts, harsh words, or disregard for their feelings. The Moon person may feel emotionally attacked, threatened, or constantly on edge, leading to emotional shutdown or trauma. With Mercury, arguments are frequent, and communication becomes a war zone. Mars pushes, interrupts, and provokes, while Mercury tries to explain, often in vain. This can lead to verbal fights, sarcasm, and mental exhaustion, where the Mercury person feels belittled or verbally bullied. In the case of Venus, Mars creates a love/hate pull. There's intense sexual attraction, but it's laced with friction, jealousy, and impatience. Mars may pressure or objectify Venus, while Venus may feel desired but also disrespected. Love quickly flips into irritation or hostility. When Mars squares or opposes another person's Mars, you get a full-on clash of wills. Both people want control, neither wants to compromise, and tempers flare easily. These connections are competitive and aggressive, with constant tension and a risk of physical or verbal fights. Finally, when Mars hard aspects the ascendant, there's a visceral reaction. The Mars person may come across as too intense, pushy, or physically overbearing. The ascendant person may feel uncomfortable, provoked, or even threatened by the Mars individual's presence. Altogether, these hard Mars aspects in Synastry create a relationship dynamic that feels like walking through fire, full of passion, yes, but also full of sharp edges, emotional bruises, and unresolved tension that can escalate into explosive confrontations. Uranus square or opposition in Synastry. Uranus square or opposition to the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, or ascendant in Synastry always brings the chaos connection in relationships. When Uranus forms hard aspects like the square or opposition in Synastry, the relationship becomes a roller coaster of instability, emotional shocks, and sudden detachment. Uranus is the planet of disruption and rebellion, and in these tense aspects, it acts like a lightning bolt striking the core of the other person. When Uranus squares or opposes the Sun person may feel constantly undermined or destabilized. The Uranus person resists commitment or consistency, leaving the Sun feeling rejected, unimportant, or like they're chasing someone who keeps slipping away. When this hits the Moon, it's emotional whiplash. The Moon person may experience sudden emotional highs followed by cold detachment. One moment, everything feels electric, the next, they feel abandoned or emotionally unsafe. With Mercury, communication is unpredictable. Uranus brings erratic thinking, interruptions, and an unwillingness to follow logic. The Mercury person may feel mentally destabilized or intellectually attacked by strange, rebellious, or inconsistent behavior. In the case of Venus, the relationship starts with intense attraction, but quickly becomes unstable. Uranus brings excitement, but also sudden disconnection. One person may ghost, cheat, or abruptly lose interest without warning. Venus ends up feeling emotionally played or confused by the mixed signals. When Uranus hard aspects Mars, sexual and physical energy becomes chaotic. The Mars person may feel their actions or desires are constantly disrupted or rejected. Arguments flare without warning, and sexual chemistry swings between obsession and rejection. Finally, when Uranus squares or opposes the ascendant, it impacts attraction and presence. The Uranus person may feel drawn to the ascendant's energy but resents any expectations or closeness. The ascendant person is often shocked by the Uranus person's unpredictable behavior or sudden distancing. Overall, Uranus hard aspects in Synastry bring a push-pull dynamic that's exciting but emotionally exhausting. There's no stability, no ground to stand on, just the constant fear that the person you're trying to hold on to could vanish without warning. These are the classic aspects of on-again, off-again relationships, sudden breakups, and emotional confusion disguised as freedom. The themes discussed in these Synastry aspects may seem all too familiar. Many of us have likely experienced them at some point in our lives. No one wants to go through the emotional turbulence that comes with these intense connections, so it's important to be aware of these red flags before entering any relationship. If there are multiple hard aspects, particularly from the same malefic planets like Pluto, Saturn, Neptune, Mars, and Uranus, impacting your personal planets in close orb, and the softer, more harmonious Synastry aspects are missing, this can be a clear warning sign. Stay vigilant and stay safe.